Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat? So the Saints made a pretty significant investment in free agent tight end Dallin Holker. Out of Colorado State, he's 6'3", 241. Pretty impressive at the combine. A lot of people thought he would get picked, and he didn't. So Holker had 64 catches for over 700 yards and 6 touchdowns last year. But what's interesting is the Saints have paid him $235,000 guaranteed as an undrafted free agent. So let me put some context around this. Guaranteed money doesn't always hit. Last year, there were 3 players that the Saints guaranteed more than $200,000 to. Mark Evans, the offensive lineman out of Pine Bluff, they guaranteed him $241K. Anthony Orji out of Vandy got $216, and Shaq Davis, the wide receiver out of South Carolina State, got $216. Now, none of those guys made the 53-man roster, but all were added to the practice squad. And as a reminder, Shaq Davis is now in Philly. So didn't exactly work out. 2 years ago, you paid Rashid Shaheed $220K, and that's obviously worked out. But you paid Abram Smith. Remember Abram Smith, the running back out of Baylor? They paid him $222. Guy got cut. So it doesn't always work out this way. But they're guaranteeing more money in this case to an undrafted free agent than they would to their 7th-round draft pick. So I think when I look at this, my biggest question is, man, on its face, you have a crowded tight end room. You paid Juwan Johnson. You brought in Foster Moreau last year in free agency. You had Jimmy Graham last year as well, who now we all assume is retired. His cryptic social media posts would certainly lead you to believe that. And you still got Taysom in his hybrid tight end role. So in theory, you could say, well, you got Juwan Johnson, Foster Moreau, Jimmy Graham retires, and so now Dallin Holker becomes the number 3 tight end. I could buy that, except he's not exactly the mold of Jimmy Graham, the big 6'6", red zone target, leaper, who's really just the pass catcher. He certainly has pass catching ability, but he reminds you more of a prototypical tight end. So this is my question, is what does Klint Kubik want out of his tight ends? Because my first thought was, man, because I'm programmed from the last decade plus of thinking, or actually the last decade and a half, to think, okay, well, it's Jeremy Shockey, it's Jimmy Graham, it's Ben Watson, it's Kobe Fleener, it's Jared Cook, it's Adam Troutman. Like, that's the tight ends that the Saints want. And then you kind of have to reset and go, oh, wait, Sean Payton and Pete Carmichael aren't here anymore. What we have known about the tight end spot at LSU, with LSU, what we have known about the tight end spot with the Saints isn't necessarily what it is now. Like, Foster Moreau last year had the fewest amount of targets since his rookie year. Like, Foster, I think, is way more of a pass catcher than a prototypical blocker, although he can block. And I don't know that there's a role for Juwan Johnson in this offense, because when I look at what Klint Kubik has done with tight ends, most notably with George Kittle in San Francisco. Now, look, Kittle was there in San Francisco, but it's still the scheme he's running. And I could look back to Kyle Rudolph in Minnesota. That ain't Juwan Johnson. Juwan Johnson's a 6'6" dude that was a receiver at Penn State and Oregon. The Saints brought him in and said, hey, we're going to put a little weight on you, put you in a 3-point stance, and create a mismatch with a linebacker or a safety. Okay. That's not what Klint Kubik does or is shown to do historically. So part of me thinks the odd man out here is probably Juwan Johnson. And you see Foster Moreau become featured more in this offense. And then maybe Dallin Holker is clearly they're investing in him. I mean, they're paying him like more handsomely with guaranteed money than you would pay a draft pick. So that's going to be one of the really interesting things to watch throughout this camp. And I know everybody's talking about Dallin Holker. Well, now there's even more reason to say it because what do we always say? Actions speak louder than words. Well, you can tell me you love this guy, but when you pay him $235K guaranteed as an undrafted free agency, you're showing us all how much you love him. You're paying him more than you paid Rashid Shaheed coming out of Weber State. More than you paid Mark Evans last year, Anthony Orji coming out of Vandy, or Shaq Davis, or Abram Smith, whenever everyone wanted him coming out of Baylor, and you actually had a spot on your roster at running back with Mark Ingram leaving. So, yeah, I don't think this is just a flyer. I think they see a guy where they see real value in someone that matches what Klint Kubik wants to do. That's going to be fascinating. Because truly, as long as the Sean Payton, Pete Carmichael era had existed, they had to have that pass-catching tight end. And honestly, when they traded Jimmy Graham to Seattle, they never found it. Certainly not at that level again, but Ben Watson was the closest thing to a consistent level again. I mean, Jared Cook and Kobe Fleener were gigantic wastes of money. They were huge busts. They're off on the island of misfit toys. You drafted Adam Troutman in round 3 hoping he was going to be the guy, and it never worked. So, that's how we've been programmed, and Juwan Johnson was part of that. And he's a holdover from that, but I don't know that there's really that much of a role. There may be, by the way. I'm not saying there isn't. I'm just saying when I look at what Klint Kubik's offenses have looked like, what the tight ends in his offense have looked like, it's been interesting. Like, another fascinating thing for me, like, do you have the Kyle Juszczyk in this offense? Now, I'm not saying you have someone that's going to be that productive, but could Taysom Hill be that guy in this offense? I mean, he looks more reminiscent of what Juszczyk is in San Francisco than what Kittle is. So maybe Taysom's role morphs into more of what Kyle Juszczyk was. Maybe we do see Foster Moreau more of your prototypical tight end instead of what he was doing a year ago. Maybe Juwan Johnson doesn't have a role. All of this is going to be us learning. Because for 15 years, we've had assumptions and things that have been programmed because we watched the same thing for 15 years. The same offense, the same defense, the same strategy approach. And it's starting to evolve and change with the new offense, which is, in a way, kind of exciting, especially considering the results you had a year ago. So the Saints, $235K for rookie free agent tight end Dallin Holker out of Colorado State. You want to look at what undrafted free agent is most likely to make the team? That's a pretty good place to start. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.